Good afternoon. I want to thank all of you all for being here. While I do not like the circumstances in which we are here, I think it's very important that you, one, hear from me, but also that we have a frank and honest conversation with regards to LSP and everything that's surrounding our agency. But before I begin, I think it's important for us to kind of say a few words for those that are experiencing some hardships as a result of Hurricane Ida. There's a lot of people impacted, a lot of our people in our agency that are impacted, and I need you to know that my heart goes out to you. I continue to lift you up in prayer, but most importantly, I need you to know that you're not in this by yourself. We're right alongside you. We're going to do everything we can to ensure that you have a safe recovery and a speedy return. As you can see, we continue to support our communities through a very difficult and demanding time by providing services and support with the recovery efforts. It's important to note that over 150 troopers and DPS police, as well as DPS employees, have also been impacted by the storm. But although they're going through their own trials and tribulations, they remain steadfast in supporting our communities during this very difficult time. So I really want to let them know that all of you all are in my prayers, and we're right alongside of you, doing what we can to help you. Upon assuming the role of Superintendent of Louisiana State Police in October of 2020, I quickly realized that our agency faced some significant challenges. And although the events in question happened prior to my administration, I committed myself and my team to making significant changes that would vastly improve the service that we provide all of our citizens. But before I get into that, let me just start by saying that I do not condone any form of excessive force, nor will I tolerate this type of behavior in my agency. The mission of our men and women is simple. It's to serve our citizens and the visitors to our state with professionalism, with pride, and with compassion. And although this hasn't always happened in the past, I can assure you that I will continue to hold those that violate our rules, that violate the laws and the Constitution, accountable for their actions and for their behavior. With that said, we continue to move our agency forward by implementing reform and changes to policies on multiple different fronts. But before I speak of those changes, I would like to put a couple things in context. Over the last decade, troopers have encountered over 5.7 million citizens through traffic stops, arrests, and motorist assist. During that time, troopers were involved in use of force incidents 0.052% of the time. Now, however, that does not change the fact that we've had some employees that have violated the trust of our citizens and the trust of their fellow co-workers. And when that occurs, it is incumbent upon us as leaders of this agency to ensure that we do what's right to hold them accountable and responsible. Over the last several months, our agency has been questioned about the handling of certain incidents, policies, practices, and internal investigations. And while I share your concern, I awake each and every day with the sole purpose of ensuring that we improve our agency in every aspect, in every way. But as you can imagine, law enforcement is not an exact science. There are processes for investigating and prosecuting criminal cases that we need to abide by under the Constitution, under the laws of the state, and the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights. And it's with that in mind that I discharge my duties. As previously mentioned, there are several incidents that we've received questions on. And unfortunately, several of them are currently under investigation, which precludes me from discussing them. However, I would like to speak about some of the most recent, especially the recent story involving Lieutenant John Clary. As many of you may know, earlier this year, my agency personnel discovered that the video evidence relative to Mr. Ronald Green, recorded by Lieutenant Clary's body-worn camera, was not submitted to the district attorney's office with the original case file. It was through our personnel's discovery that we learned of this. In this case, in the case of Lieutenant Clary, the videos were logged and submitted to our evidence.com system the day of the incident. They were also previously provided to federal authorities and used in the disciplinary proceedings of Trooper York. It was again provided to federal investigators and to the district attorney's office in a supplemental report. But we didn't stop there. Immediately after learning of this, I authorized my internal affairs section to launch an administrative investigation into this matter. As a result of this investigation, we determined that Lieutenant Clary logged and submitted the videos in accordance with our policy. We also learned that multiple current and former employees participated in the initial investigation. We attempted to speak with the former employees, however, they refused our request. And I'll speak to that a little later as I talk about the process. We did, however, interview the current employees that participated in the initial investigation. Once the evidence was collected and the interviews conducted, we closed the administrative investigation with a finding of not sustained due to insufficient evidence to prove or disprove that Lieutenant Clary intentionally withheld the video evidence. No discipline was delivered as a result of this finding. So I'd like to kind of explain the difference of sustainment. When we're dealing with sustained and not sustained, we're looking for reasonable amount of evidence, whether it be tangible evidence and or statements that would lead us to a decision of sustaining him. This is not unfounded, and when we're dealing with unfounded, that means that there was no evidence to suggest that he in fact lied or did not lie or withheld evidence. In this particular instance, due to the evidence that was provided or the lack thereof of evidence that was provided, we could not say for sure whether or not Lieutenant Clary purposefully withheld evidence. So I need you all to know that. Some of these investigations are clear and possess physical evidence. When there is no physical evidence, we weigh heavily upon the statements and testimonies of those that we interview. When those statements differ, we must search for additional evidence if available. But if not, the investigation has to be terminated based upon a lack of evidence. Now, in the event that additional information and or evidence is presented, then we can reopen and follow up on that. But in this particular case, there was no additional information and or evidence available. As such, Lieutenant Clary was not sustained on any policy violations. As noted, there are various considerations when deciding on whether or not to investigate and what type of investigation that we must conduct. For instance, if we receive information that an employee violated policy and or committed an alleged criminal act, we must first determine if there is credible information and or evidence to move forward with an investigation. If an administrative investigation is warranted on a trooper for any reason, and during the review, criminal investigators then can pursue an investigation. However, if we determine that there are criminal violations, then the administrative investigation is immediately suspended and we move towards a criminal investigation. And only at the end of that criminal investigation will we reinstitute or reinitiate an administrative investigation. If credible information on a trooper is indicating possible criminal activity, then we move straight into a criminal investigation. A complaint within itself without any evidence, any tangible evidence, does not constitute a criminal act. As such, we may not move directly into a criminal investigation. However, if we find reasonable suspicion, then yes, we will. And again, that is all dependent upon the information and evidence that's presented. When the evidence and or information presented is not clear, and we identify potential policy violations, we may elect, as we did, to move towards an administrative investigation. If during that investigation we ascertain reasonable suspicion that a criminal violation has taken place or was committed, then we'll move towards conducting a criminal investigation as advised. Also, our internal affairs investigators handle our administrative investigation. Our criminal investigative division personnel handles our criminal investigations. But our internal affairs investigators have the ability to use information gathered in a criminal case. However, the criminal investigation cannot use information learned in our administrative investigation. And this is because under administrative law guidelines, all employees are compelled to participate in administrative investigations, but they're not compelled to participate in criminal investigations. Failure to participate in an administrative investigation could result in several disciplinary measures taken, including and up to termination. But as you know, or may be aware, there are also challenges with conducting administrative and criminal investigations. For instance, when conducting an administrative investigation, we cannot compel former employees to come in and participate. As in this particular case, there were some former employees that refused to participate. Second, we're limited on the amount of time, due to the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, on the amount of time we can take to conduct an investigation. Under this particular time frame, it was 60 days. So at the end of that 60 days, if we do not have the requisite amount of information, we can, depending upon circumstances, request an extension. And of course, the accused in this particular case would have to agree to that before we can be granted that amount of time. However, that's not always the case. But I would like to say, due to the work of the Police Training and De-Escalation Task Force headed by Senator Fields, this time frame has changed from 60 to 75 days. I think that provides us additional support in being able to conduct our investigations. But there are also some limitations in conducting criminal investigations, as we've discussed. The first is that the burden of proof falls directly square on the agency or the investigating body. The second challenge is that it lies with our inability to compel any witnesses and or accused to talk with us while we're conducting an investigation. And that's covered by the Constitution, as everybody knows. When there are instances in which there is no physical evidence, we have to rely upon the testimonies of those involved. This often leaves us with a disadvantage. All administrative investigations of troopers must be in line with Chapter 12 of the Louisiana State Police Commission rules, which is our governing authority. This process requires the department to balance the employee's criminal due process with the administrative investigative obligations. So I would like to speak to transparency for a moment. I know that we've received a lot of criticism and there's been a lot of heartburn with regards to our agency not releasing body-worn camera footage and or other evidence being requested. You know, it's an ongoing process with our agencies and other agencies, whether it be local, other state, and federal agencies, to determine the appropriate time to release videos and documents while protecting the integrity of the case and considering the due process of all involved. That's always at the forefront of our decision. Premature and unauthorized release of investigative evidence in non-adjudicated cases can jeopardize the constitutionally protected legal rights of the accused individuals, potentially preventing full accountability in these matters. Let's think about that for a second. Simply put, if we prematurely release evidence in a case involving an accused employee, whether it be a trooper or anyone else on a criminal matter or otherwise, it could impede our desire to really achieve the results and justice that we're trying to achieve. So that's always something that we consider when we're thinking about whether or not to release body-worn camera footage and otherwise. By releasing portions of the evidence by non-investigating outlets, it can also impact the jury pool and influencing due process. Like many of our friends in the media, I'll be the first to tell you, I would love nothing more than to release the evidence as soon as we can. I think it gives our citizens a sense of relief. It reassures them that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, and it helps to communicate the facts of the case. But as previously mentioned, doing so could have unintentional consequences that could gravely impact the outcome of those cases. So hopefully, we're nearing a point with the other investigations that are ongoing involving our agency where we can provide you additional information that would offer that additional insight to the changes, to the case facts, and to the processes and developments. But ultimately, I need everybody to understand that the officers who are subject to these investigations are afforded due process and deserve no more, no less than the involved people in any other type case. And we're going to own that. I must say that when any incident involves our own personnel, there may or may not be administrative or criminal violations related to that incident. But I need everyone to understand, regardless of that, you have my commitment that I am going to do everything possible to hold them accountable for their actions and for their behavior. I will not compromise on that. So I'd like to take a little time to discuss some of the changes that we've taken in our agency. We've made some significant changes, starting with our command team. I thought it was very important, not just with our command team, but throughout our agency, for us to really look at and emulate our communities in which we serve. We have a very diverse state, and that diversity for me means value added. Anytime we bring together people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different sections of life, then that brings the opportunity for both of them or all of them to learn more information. And that's the way I'm pursuing with leading my department. Diversity is value added. It's not a subtraction. It's not a giveaway. It's value added. We all grow as a result of someone else that comes into our lives. Now, that's not always the case, and I understand that. But I will not accept anything less. I've been all across the state. I've served through the military in other parts of the country and in other parts of the world. In every instance that I have come across someone from any other culture, I've gained, I've learned, I was made better. And I truly believe that if we all embrace that sense of diversity, we will all be better for it. So with that, we've made some other significant changes. As you can see, I've made my command team more diverse. I continue to work towards making my department more diverse. And it's not to say that one demographic is better than the other. I think all of us together, as I mentioned, become better. I'll start with our policies. We've made some significant changes with our policies and with the help of others in our communities and leadership. You know, with the assistance of our police training, screening, and de-escalation task force, we've implemented a duty to intervene policy. Now every officer, every trooper has the duty to intervene. There's no excuse. When safe to do so, you will intervene, or you'll be held accountable. We've enhanced accountability in the body-worn camera policy. We now mandate a specific amount of body-worn camera footage that will be reviewed by supervisors over a certain period of time. Every quarter, our immediate supervisors will review their employees' body-worn camera footage. We've expanded the use of force policy, including a ban on chokeholds, a ban on the use of impact weapons to the head or neck area, and mandated that all of our troopers and DPS officers carry less than lethal weapons. And that's important because we do not live in a society where the gun should be your first tool to be used. There are additional tools, less than lethal tools, that we can use to get the job done. But we also understand that there are situations that may call for us to use lethal force in the defense of others or ourselves. We understand that we're prepared to do that. But I also want to make sure that if those other instances involve us using less than lethal force to accomplish the same goal and keep everybody safe, then that's what we will do. In the form of training, we've mandated implicit bias training for all personnel. That's very important for me, and as I mentioned before, I've gone across the state, I've gone across the nation, and we're different. And as people, we all carry biases. Whether we admit it or not, we all carry a bias about something. It may be a bias about sports. It may be a bias about wrestling. It may be a bias about other cultures, but we all carry biases. I think it's very important for us to speak to those biases, understand the perception of those biases, and as we do so, then what that does for us is that helps us and gives us additional information when we encounter people that do not look like us, talk like us, or act like us. That can be someone with emotional challenge or a mental health condition. So we continue to build by bringing that to the forefront. And I think by understanding the implicit biases that we're all better and we're all more informed. As such, we can achieve a better outcome to all of our situations and our encounters. As I mentioned before, we created a duty to intervene policy, but we did not stop there. We're creating training that also supports that duty to intervene policy. By doing that and creating that training, that gives all of our personnel additional tools to use when we see someone who may be under stress. As I mentioned before, many of our employees are undergoing the same stress, the same issues that our citizens are dealing with Hurricane Ida. And as we well know, that brings on additional stress to us. It's important for our co-workers and their co-workers to recognize that and to have that empowerment and the ability to step in when that stress level may get to a point where it now starts to impact the citizens of the state and or our employees. And that's what this training does. It gives us an additional tool so that we can stop any potential situations from happening like we've experienced several years ago. Rank doesn't matter. Status does not matter. Everybody has a responsibility to ensure that we all go home safely at night. We're also developing a de-escalation training. You know, as we begin to pursue best practices across the nation, there are several de-escalation training programs that we came across that we feel that would really assist us in reducing some of the use of force incidents that we've been involved in. And by developing this training, I think it gives us, again, another tool, another force multiplier to ensure that we get the best results out of every encounter. You know, we're here for public safety. Sometimes that means training, it means education, sometimes it means enforcement. But when we take enforcement, it's important for us to understand that it does not mean that we need to go to the 10th degree. By instituting that de-escalation training, that gives us an opportunity to approach every situation and get the best outcome. But again, we haven't stopped there. So on the operational front, we've created a force investigative unit to assist us in investigating officer-involved shootings and in custody deaths. And again, this is important because during those significant events, oftentimes that's when we lose the confidence of our citizens, when there's either the perception or the reality of an investigation not being properly handled. By creating this unit, we know that it will be based off of national best practices. Those that will be participating on that specialized unit will receive the best training, and they will be considered subject matter experts. That ensures us as an agency as well as the community that you're going to get the best result from that particular investigation. But there also, this program and this practice is used by many of the agencies that have undergone federal review. So we know it's a proven practice. And by having that specialized unit reporting directly to the command staff, you lack the normal challenges, red tape, and as some people would see, interference that you typically get from other investigative bodies. So me as the agency head, I'm going to get directly briefed on any and all of those significant investigations. And that gives me the opportunity to make an unfiltered but yet informed decision on those very serious situations. And it's our intent and our hope that by doing so, that begins to build that trust in our communities. Now, while that's important, I think one of the things that we have lacked for many years has been technology. When we talk about accountability, it's very difficult to hold someone accountable when you have disparate systems that do not communicate and talk. Whether it gives a bad actor an out or it complicates the ability of a manager to supervise their employees. We're a statewide agency. We have supervisors that supervise employees across the state. Very large geographical area. And there's a lot of challenges. But with the institution of technology, we can bridge those gaps, close those gaps, and again, become more efficient. Now, that started in 2017 when we implemented the body-worn camera technology. And as many of you all have seen, that's proven to be very instrumental in, one, identifying bad actors, and two, gathering facts. All of that is very important, but the ultimate goal is to save lives. So we're not stopping there. We're also presently installing a computer-aided dispatch system, as well as a statewide records management system. And what those systems do is they now give supervisors enhanced information at their fingertips where they can begin to see potential problems. When you have those type of systems communicating and providing analytics, it makes it a lot easier. And law enforcement, as people know, we're great when it comes to training. We're great when it comes to enforcement. But we have to do better when it comes to reporting, analyzing. And these tools help us to do that. We have some additional projects that's coming forth. We're going to also bring in a statewide e-crash system, as well as an e-citation system. And all of these systems, when fully implemented, will communicate with one another. Again, enhancing communication, but equally as important, enhancing accountability. When dealing with reporting, we found that there was a gap between employees and bad actors being fired and going to other locations and other agencies and being rehired. So we led the charge of speaking with Post and our other law enforcement counterparts on changing the post form. Now there's a location on the post form that identifies if there's extenuating circumstances of someone resigning, retiring, or being fired under investigation. That now gives that current or that other employer the opportunity to really determine whether or not they're going to take a potential bad actor and rehire them. We believe that by possessing that information, that reduced the potential for those bad actors to go to another community and commit some of the same acts. That was very important. But we're also creating a standardized and statewide early identification system for our own agency. And what this EIS, or early identification system, does is there are certain categories that we use to identify potential risk, whether it be pursuits, whether it be complaints, or otherwise, that we can point to and start to delve a little deeper before something major happens. And by doing so, that provides us information and hopefully provides us the ability to stop something from happening before it becomes major. But as I learned in the military, the most important resource that we could ever have are our people. So We're also focusing on recruiting. As I mentioned before, building a diverse law enforcement agency is very important to me. And the best way to start and the best place to start outside of that command staff is at the recruiting place, at that beginning of the agency. Building diversity for troopers coming in, getting more females, getting more minority troopers, getting more people from diverse backgrounds helps us as an agency. It helps us mitigate challenges with communicating in some of those communities, but it helps us also gain greater understanding. So we're working extremely hard to utilize traditional and non-traditional ways to recruit diverse populations. And as I mentioned before, we're working extremely hard to build that diversity through our department, through our promotions, as well as through our recruiting. So I want to take this time to speak to those of you that are interested in becoming a public servant. The Louisiana State Police is a great agency. I've been here going on 24 years. It has given me experiences. It has allowed me to touch people and people to touch me in ways that I've never been touched. If you are interested in being a public servant, if you're interested in just being the change that you want to see, I implore you, I encourage you to get in contact with us. We're looking for qualified applicants. We have an academy that's starting this year, and I've committed to holding at least one academy every year. So if you're looking for that challenge and you want to be the change that you're wanting to see, get in touch with us. You can go to lsp.org and click on Becoming a Trooper, and we'll give you all of the information. Or you can call us by phone, area code 225-925-6202. Let me talk about mental health for a second. When I first entered law enforcement, we were seen as inanimate objects. We were thought of as tools to enforce the law. But what most people did not, I guess, take into consideration while we're in this uniform is we're just as human as you are. We're the same people in the communities. We're affected by the same tragedies, and we're angered by the same unfair and unfortunate acts. We receive the same level of stress. The only difference is, because of our job and the nature of our job, sometimes we encounter some things in a society more frequently than most people. When there's a fatality, a family is suffering, they mourn loss of their loved one. That trooper is also impacted because that trooper is the one that has to make that notification. The trooper is the one that has to investigate that. And when they're finished investigating that particular incident or that fatality, they go home to their families, they go out the next day, and they may encounter another fatality, another unfortunate incident involving the loss of life. Those things impact us. So one of the major foundations and major points of my administration is mental health, emotional health. I want to make sure that our people understand that it's not a weakness to receive help. It's actually a strength. It does not make a difference who you are. It does not make a difference of what your rank. I have experienced anxiety. I have experienced emotions. And it's important that we realize that. So I want our citizens to understand that if you encounter a situation where a trooper may not be acting in a certain manner, contact our agency, notify our internal affairs. It may not just be for the sake of holding them accountable. Sometimes you may actually be saving their lives or saving them. It helps them. And we're going to likewise do our part to keep all of our personnel as emotionally and mentally stable as possible, because it is a tough job. So, upon taking this job and taking this appointment, one of the main foundations that I settled on was accountability. Over the last 11 months, I've made arrest of 4 troopers, investigated numerous others, and terminated several of our personnel, simply because it was the right thing to do. I will not have anyone on our agency that is going to harm our communities, plain and simple. I will not have anybody on our agency that's going to violate our laws. Where I can, where the law allows me to, I'm going to hold them accountable. If I can train them, I'm going to train them. If they're beyond training, I'm going to terminate them. I remain committed to that. Now, I do not say this lightly. As I mentioned before, our troopers go through a lot. So I take this responsibility to heart. But I will not compromise on the safety of our citizens, nor the safety of our personnel. Some of the things that I did to increase our accountability was, the number one thing was really get my vision of enforcing with compassion. You know, our job is tough, and saving lives is vitally important. If we can do that via training, if we can do it via education, then we're going to do it. But if I can do it via enforcement, then I'm going to do it via enforcement. But we're going to do it the right way, via our Constitution, our state laws, and our policy and procedure. And when our folks fail to do that, then we're going to hold them accountable. But with that vision, we also drive down that accountability and that responsibility to our supervisors. And that's something we hadn't done so great in the past. We went from colonel to trooper in accountability. I have sergeants, I have lieutenants, I have captains, I have majors and lieutenant colonels. They are now all accountable. I do not just look at the trooper. I look at everyone in that chain of command. If they fail to do their part, they will be held accountable. And I think you've seen that in some of the disciplinary results that I've handed out. If you are a captain and you fail to properly manage your personnel, then you're going to be held accountable. If you're a lieutenant, you fail to do it, you're going to be held accountable. So it started with the vision, continued with the communication, and now the enforcement of it. And I think as we continue to build that, our personnel begin to understand what's expected of them. And like all of us, we change. We acclimate to whatever our conditions are. So we're going to continue to build our agency, but we're going to build it with troopers that care about our communities, and that's going to be held accountable. We're going to enforce the standards equitably, fairly across the board, and we're going to build on it. And when we make mistakes, we're going to own it. Plain and simple, the buck stops with me. Where I can divulge and explain information, I'm going to give it to you all. Where I can't, I'm going to tell you I can't, and I'll ask for your patience. But you have my assurance that we're going to hold our people accountable. And I believe that doing so, that helps to build the confidence of our communities. It helps for us to build the closeness of our communities. We are a part of our communities. We're no longer just that trooper sitting on the highway. We are now a part of our communities. We're working in our communities this very minute. We're working in shelters across the state. We're working in devastated communities across the state. We're cutting down trees. We are a part of our communities. So that hadn't changed, and that will not change. Lastly, transparency. That was a challenge for us, and I continue to build and try to get better with regards to that. So I want, especially those of you in the media, I want you to know that I am continuing to work on being more transparent as the law allows. I will continue to communicate those challenges. If you request information, hopefully you've seen that we've changed and provided more information based upon your request, and we'll continue to build upon that, again, as the law allows. But we're also establishing a program designed to standardize the release of critical incident information. And I think by doing that, again, that gains more confidence in our communities, and it also provides our communities additional information regarding those critical incidents. But we're also pursuing opportunities to better coordinate community engagement, and that's vitally important. Again, we're not just sitting on the interstate. We are working right now with organizations to see how we can better engage community and interaction with our communities. And I think by doing that, it gives our communities, one, a better understanding of our mission and of our people, but it gives us a better understanding of the needs of our communities. And that makes us all better. But it will also assist us in identifying better ways to really understand and work with our more diverse communities, and assist us in exchanging that information before we get to critical situations. As I mentioned, the professionalism, accountability, and proper treatment of our citizens by our DPS employees is non-negotiable. I require that of every employee, including myself. The past policies and practices related to handling of excessive force and incidents are no longer in play. As we are notified, regardless of how we're notified of incidents, we're going to investigate them. We're going to follow the evidence, we're going to follow the information, and that's how we're going to determine the results of that investigation. Doesn't make a difference who you are, where you come from. We're going to do the right thing for the right reason. Before I close, I would like to just let everybody know we are a great organization. I have a great command team. We came in during a very difficult time in our state, very difficult time in our organization. I'd like to thank my command team because they've remained steadfast. They come to work every day regardless of what they read, what they hear, what they see, to do the best job they can to make us the best agency they can. I've got to thank the men and women that go out each and every day, that sacrifice their lives to help others. When others are going away, we're going to it. We're going to the danger. You can count on us. But I also need you as our citizens to understand that we are better than we were yesterday. And we will be better tomorrow than we are today. We're committed to changing, we're committed to getting better, and we're committed to being one of the best parts of our communities that we can be. So I want to thank you all, and now I'll open it up for questions. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Colonel. 4 or 5 weeks ago, Representative Ted James appeared before the Baton Rouge Press Club, stated that a major Associated Press article which said that you had accompanied Representative Ted James said you had spoken with him personally, said that Associated Press report was, quote, not accurate, unquote. Can you clear the air today as to whether the Associated Press report regarding you was accurate?
Sure. So I think it was in May. I had a conversation with District Attorney Belton, and he expressed some concerns with regards to the Ronald Green investigation. Through that conversation, he requested to meet with me and my staff, in which we met. I did not fly up there. I drove with my staff, and we discussed that investigation. At no time did I ever ask D.A. Belton or any other district attorney or any other official to not pursue charges on any of my employees. I would never do that. I have never done that. So it is, in fact, not true.
Colonel,
Yes, sir.
I'm supposed to say that you wanted the former commander, Mr. Peters, investigated up in Superintendent. Sorry about that. And that your chief of staff can stop that internal investigation.
There is no lieutenant colonel or other employee that has the power to stop any investigation that I authorize. So that is untrue. Any investigation that, in fact, I conducted an investigation, and he was disciplined as a result of that investigation. But no, sir, that's not the case. Yes, sir.
Two questions, Colonel. Number one, was the Clary video the first video that you became aware of?
No, sir. I mean, obviously, the video of Mr. Green on the entire incident was released probably shortly after I assumed command. So it was not the first video that I was aware of.
That addressed my second question, because I had a story a year ago where a now retired state trooper said he witnessed other troopers watching the video long before the investigation became public.
That's very possible. I wasn't there during that time in this role, but oftentimes when we conduct those investigations, then videos are uploaded and they are generally available to all of our troopers, unless it's a significant and otherwise determined by the superintendent or someone in the command staff to restrict video access. So that's possible. Yes, sir.
I was wondering, is it okay for the police department to alter body cam footage? They altered my body cam footage, but turned a lot on the OPC law. There's no way that it says I want to tell anybody what the officer was doing in my house. He
No.
slammed me to the ground, choked me, my shoulder even operated. And they saying they did nothing to me. But I have the proof right here. I got a body cam footage that you could tell, but the lawyer I had said he couldn't. But I go to Home Depot and they tell me it's easy to tell. So all that stuff you're saying, I heard that from the Lafayette Police Department, the sheriff, and everybody else. But in real life, y'all worse criminals than us.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, sir. And what I'd like to do is get your information and follow that up.
It's right here.
Yes, sir. I will have someone. Yes, sir.
And I have one leg at the time.
Colonel, do you think it's a problem that in recent years, black people have been the targets of state police force at roughly double the proportion of their population?
You know, there's a lot of considerations when we think about the demographics. I'm not going to cover and say what those considerations are. The bottom line is, you know, a lot of the numbers that come as a result of our use of force reporting oftentimes comes from New Orleans and other metropolitan areas, and that oftentimes has an impact on that reporting. I can't say whether or not that's a problem, but what I can tell you is that we are looking into that, and we're trying to determine whether or not there's a problem targeting or if there's just those are the stops. That I do not have a clear answer on, but we are reviewing the analytics of that. When I got the use of force report, that's one of the things that was brought to my attention, and I am definitely taking a look at. I'm always concerned about that. Every head of agency is concerned about that. I do not want that in my agency. You know, I want us to patrol based upon the needs and the safety of our motorists and our citizens. So, you know, I'm always concerned about that.
Colonel, you talked about how certain information getting out to the public might affect the integrity of the investigation. We've seen a lot of videos and certain things leaked over the past couple of months. Are you able to say how that may have impacted any of the investigations that are ongoing?
Not at this time. You know, I've really looked into those potential leaks, and oftentimes you really don't know until you get to the adjudication portion of it, and we haven't, frankly, gotten to the adjudication portion of some of those investigations. But it is a concern of mine that that information is getting out. We do not want any bad actors getting off based upon premature release of information. So that impacts our ability to formally and hold them accountable.
And with the release of critical information piece that you talked about, some of the changes there, how long do you think that will take to come online fully? And is there like a time frame that you're looking for that to happen, or what does that look like exactly?
Yeah, my staff doesn't like this, but I wish it would come online yesterday. But truthfully speaking, you know, there are some other considerations. You know, we're not the only law enforcement and or investigating body that is responsible for processes involved in the criminal justice system. There are other entities that we have to consider, whether it be joint investigations with other law enforcement agencies, as well as the prosecutorial body of the criminal justice system. So I do not have an exact time frame right now, but we are researching. We've already started to look at other agencies that have successfully done this, and we are in communications with our other law enforcement and prosecutorial bodies and partners. And it's our hope to get this up and running soon. I think it'll be a great benefit, not only for the law enforcement community, but for our citizens. It gives them, like I said, a sense of relief that we are doing the right thing.
A lot of what you showcased today deals with stopping bad behavior going forward. A lot of what we see reported deals with incidents that happen in the past. Are y'all doing some seeking reviews to catch some of those bad actors who got preferential treatment or slipping the cracks?
So it's very difficult. You know, we've been around since 1936, and for me to go back that far, I'd have to take my entire force and take them off the road and apply them to looking at things that have happened in the past. I think it's important, as information is brought to light regarding any particular bad incidents or bad acts, for us to investigate that. But our primary mission is public safety out on the roadway, highways, and in the communities. So I think it's important for us to look ahead to see how we can help reduce fatalities, help improve quality of life, and help improve public safety. And that's where our focus is right now. But as information is brought to light, then we take a look at that. We discuss it with our prosecutorial partners, and we determine whether or not, one, constitutionally and legally, can we pursue it, and if we can, then we move from there. Yes, ma'am.
So if leaders have asked the U.S. Justice Department to launch a broader pattern and practice investigation to potential systematic racial profiling similar to other cities, and you've already said that, you know, you have had concerns, you're always concerned about racial profiling. Could you explain why you believe that this would not be needed at this time?
Well, you know, that's up to the Justice Department to determine whether or not that's needed at this particular time. As far as I'm concerned, you know, I look across my agency, I look across my communities. Anytime the communities have a concern, that's a concern of mine. That's why I'm concerned about it. If there's any incident or any part of our operations that concerns our communities, then that concerns me. And I take hard look, and I take that to heart. So with regards to the Justice Department, if they decide that they're going to come in and assess us on that, then I welcome it. I'm not going to wait on them. I'm already in contact with other organizations to look at my agency and help us become better. As I told you, I wake up every day trying to find a way to make us the best agency we can be. And I'm not going to wait on another agency to do that. I'm going to pursue it each and every day. Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit more about this U.S. Justice investigation into the state police. Are you speaking with them? Are you concerned that this investigation may also lead to some possible criminal charges of state employees, including troopers?
As much as I would love to, unfortunately, I cannot speak of the U.S. Department of Justice investigation. I'm sorry.
Could you respond to a recent letter from Senator Clary where he raised concerns about discrepancies in discipline between one trooper who spoke to the media and others who are actually involved in the case?
Well, unfortunately, the letter that Senator Fields wrote about involves someone that's going through the appeals process, and I cannot speak to that at this particular time, but what I can tell you is, as I told you, as I said earlier, I am going to be fair and equitable on my discipline as well as my rewards and promotions, and I continue to do that. So unfortunately, because it's going through the appeals process, I cannot really speak to that.
Could you speak more about this force investigative unit that's looking into in-custody deaths and shootings? Like, who's on it, and will they investigate all incidents or just some?
So that particular unit was really derived from conversations I've had with agencies like NOPD, Baltimore, and others. What I found was by having those dedicated experts who are getting the latest training in that particular field, it really helps to assure us that we're getting the best quality as far as our investigations. That's not to take away from our general detectives, because we have great general detectives, but they handle a great myriad of types of investigations. By having dedicated, gives them the ability, the capability, and the time to really focus in on their craft. And that, as we've all learned over time, that gives us the best result. Now, with regards to where it's at this particular time, we've just promoted into it and created a captain. We're in the process of building the structure by placing personnel in. We haven't completed that structure build yet, but I anticipate having that structure built by the immediately after that. We're going to move into the training mode and start getting those personnel qualified and getting them the training that's required of their job functions.
Last one. Can you tell me who else was present for the meeting with District Attorney Belton?
It was Lieutenant Colonel Cameron and my chief legal at the time, which was Faye Morrison. And of course, it was District Attorney Belton, his first assistant, and another one of his members. Lieutenant Colonel Kane, Lieutenant Colonel Cameron, and Faye Morrison. One more question, please.
Could you speak more about accountability for body camera footage? What would that look like?
So, in the past, our policy stipulated that our supervisors would review body cam footage periodically. Well, definitive. If you take Hurricane Ida, then someone may say, I couldn't review the body cam footage because I had a lot of other duties. What we've done is we've stipulated that every supervisor will review a certain amount of their body-worn, of the personnel's body-worn camera. I think it's 2 in-car camera, 2 body-worn camera footages of their personnel each quarter. And what that does for us is that guarantees that there's a certain amount. And how we came up with that idea and that quantity was based upon their other duties and responsibilities. Obviously, we cannot have troopers and our supervisors sitting on the desk, the camera not patrolling the roads, because then we're not meeting our mission. But it is important for them to manage people, and that's those manage. So that's how we've made it more restrictive. We have created a policy whereby you're mandated to review a certain amount of time. Okay.
We need one more question right here, and then we'll follow up.
Can you talk about what specifically prompted you to shut down the panel that was on footage, and if any cases were referred to follow-up investigations as crimes or policy investigations?
So that particular audit panel committee was put together to really try and identify the scale or size, or if we had a larger problem. And one of the, really one of the foundations of that was the integrity of that panel was, what do you call it? Confidentiality of the information that's being viewed. So when of the panel and compromised the integrity of the audit, as such, I felt that it was best to go ahead and terminate that objective. As far as any particular cases that was referred, I would have to get with the panel, and I'd have to. So I'm in the process of pursuing an outside organization to come in and conduct that assessment. These are some of the personnel and or former law enforcement personnel that possess that capability and possess that expertise. And I think what they can do is they can give me a wider range of as to where my agency is. I haven't cemented that particular arrangement and that particular event yet, but I am in the process of trying to get that done. I would prefer not to. Some of certain purchases. Going through that right now before we make a determination. We haven't made that determination just yet, and I do not want to really, it would be disadvantageous to them for me to put that out. I'd like to thank y'all. I appreciate y'all's time.